Hello, kia ora, shmai, good day, howdy. How's it going? Welcome back to the latest episode of the Be Better podcast. I hope you are all doing well out there in the interwebs. We're just on the back of doing 2 days of the Be Better virtual summit. So it's been a busy couple of days in the Be Better podcast studio. So you possibly might have already seen the virtual summit because it was live streamed. It's already out there in the Ethernet, and we will be launching it as separate podcast episodes, possibly before this one goes out. So hopefully you've enjoyed that and you enjoyed some of those guests. Really, really lucky today. We've got another amazing guest. It's quite easy to get amazing guests because the B Corp world seems to be full of fairly amazing humans. With me today, I have got Jenn Harper, and she is dialing in all the way from Toronto in Canada. So g'day, kia ora, shmai. Shmai is Welsh for hello, and so I'm half Welsh, being a Jones. So I like to throw that in. How would we say hello from where you're from?
Well, we have quite a few languages here, but predominantly English and French. So hello and bonjour. I'm
Nice.
terrible at French, so but then my indigenous language, we would say bonjour.
Bonjour.
Mhm.
Wow, and that's kind of close to bonjour, but is that
Not like
completely?
it's completely different, but it
It's
does.
completely
You're
different, but
right.
it
It does
sounds
sounds like that.
right. I
Yeah,
just wondered
yeah,
if there was if one had if maybe you had influenced the French.
yeah.
But no,
I have
that's all
no
good.
idea. I wish I was a language expert, but I am not. No, there's two ways to say hello in my indigenous language, bonjour and anin. They both mean hello, kind of how are you all encompassed in one.
Nice. Well, there you
hmm
go. Welcome. So for people who don't know who you are and what you do, give us a quick intro. Who are you? What do you do?
For sure. So I am the founder and CEO of a company called Cheekbone Beauty Cosmetics, but I have, of course, am a mom of two. My son is 22, my daughter's 19, married for this year, I think it's 24 years, and to my husband, Paul. And my business was literally the epitome of a side hustle off the side of my desk for 3 years. And the initial beginnings of this is really strange. Like I was in the seafood industry. I was a sales rep for a seafood company for many years. And prior to that, I was in sales for broadline food distribution and then always worked in hospitality. So like hotels, restaurants, and
Mm.
usually like higher end boutique style fine dining places. But then in January of 2015, so 10 years ago now, I literally had a pop out of bed, middle of the night dream, three native indigenous little girls covered in lip gloss. How I knew it was lip gloss, I have no idea. But all I remember was waking up and I remember their brown skin, rosy cheeks, and they were giggling and laughing because they had made such a mess of themselves. Fast forward, and the initial ideas that I wrote on my laptop that night were start a business and figure out how to make a lip gloss. And then I wanted to use a portion of the profits to do something to support my Indigenous community at the time. So in Canada, in 2015, we were learning about the residential boarding school system. So,
Mhm.
colonization here in North America, over the years, once that happened, church and state were putting Indigenous people and children into these school systems to assimilate them in a more European way of living and lifestyle, and really trying to eradicate our culture. And I learned at that time after that dream that my grandparents both survived that. So
Wow.
traumatized, essentially. I learned a term over these last few years called generational or transgenerational trauma, and
Yep.
how those early events really impacted my family and many of Indigenous people across Canada and the United States in many difficult ways, if you will. And so, armed with that information, I was like, okay, well, what can I do? I don't know anything about, I guess like things like activism, and that's not really anywhere that I've ever played, but I was always working for other people. I felt like I kind of knew business, and I had this idea of like, could we put a product in the world where we were representing our communities, but then also like doing good in business at the same time? Not
Mm.
familiar at all with the B Corp community, but familiar with brands that really were B Corps and align with their values. Like always been a fan of Patagonia,
Yep.
brands like Tom shoes were coming into the
Yep.
world, that like one for one. So I was like, could this be possible? Is there something I could do? And it's crazy. Like it seems so crazy to me now that I would think that I could actually do this and build this bit. Like when I look back and I really recognize how much I don't know about this industry or how much I've had to learn and the hard way in many cases over the last few years. But that's the origin story of Cheekbone Beauty Cosmetics. And we proudly are sort of doing everything that I wanted to do from that initial dream. And that's really make a big impact in our community and while trying to leave less of an impact on the planet. And I feel like we're accomplishing that. And it's never perfect, but I feel like we're really on the right path.
Nice. I think I've got 99 of these podcast episodes out already. We've got a few stacked up to go, but there's a couple of things that I think are really consistent with a lot of other people's journeys. No one's perfect, not even Patagonia is perfect. We did an event in Queenstown, South Island of New Zealand last winter as a bit of a ski retreat for some B Corps in New Zealand, and the team at Patagonia do so much good stuff. But I kept like tongue in cheek giving them a bit of a rib, saying that you guys haven't even scored 200 points yet, so you're not perfect,
Yeah.
So. For people who don't know about the B Corp, obviously, at the minute you need to score there's a maximum-ish of 200 points available in the assessment. So no one is perfect, and I don't think there will ever be a perfect business, because as we understand more about the impact that we have, we think we've solved one problem, but it's like standing on the shoulders of giants. We'll suddenly go, oh, hang on, there was like 10 more problems that we hadn't seen because we were so focused on that one problem. Or the whole kind of like unintended consequences. Oh, we've solved that problem, but actually by solving it in that way, we've created another problem over here, which we hadn't considered. So I think like for anyone, just in life in general, perfection it's fleeting at best. Like you might get it for a nanosecond and then suddenly it's disappeared. But I think the other really interesting thing is particularly, it's really interesting, female founder B Corp story. So many of them are, I had this idea, I started a side hustle, suddenly I've created a massive business. It's really, there's like a handful of female founder B Corps who are, the one I'm really thinking of is Perry Drysdale. She literally was knitting gloves for her kids. And someone said, you should probably try selling them because they're really good. And she literally turned up to a couple of shops in Christchurch and said, would you buy my gloves? And the first shop said, yeah, they're really good. I'll see if I can sell them. And now she has a global brand called Untouched World. It's just like, it's really, really interesting how that there's a real, I'm going to do like a special episode 100 where I'm going to try and pull together some of the threads of the story, what I've learned over the first 100 episodes. And that's just something that really has stood out. But I think there's something in the naivety of coming into an industry where there are no expectations, because that's how we challenge and we break and we change things. Because you come in just going, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to go with what I think is right, and disrupt. That's how we disrupt industries. So super, super cool. Had you had dreams before, like anything else in your life, being guided? It was just like.
So I have like one memory of a scary dream at like the age of 7. About a character, the rope man. I just remember this guy was really scary, ropes everywhere. And so I am certainly not one that remembers their dreams very often. Yeah. So this stood out. It obviously really mattered. It felt so real to me. And that's what's kind of like an interesting part of my story that I'm really open about sharing is I achieved sobriety 2 months before having this dream. So I've now been sober for over 10 years, but I get sober November 26, 2014, and this dream happens 2 months later. And I literally was like, I was so tunnel vision. This was going to be my next career path. I was not happy in the industry I was in. But the funny part is, to me, when I look back, I was like, in those early days of having an idea, unfortunately, a lot of times our family and friends can really well-meaning people who love you can say things to you that will stop you from working on that dream. And that would be like, oh, you don't know anything about this industry. They wouldn't have been wrong. You don't have the money to do this. They also wouldn't have been wrong. And I think because of my sobriety, everyone was just like, and this sounds really humorous now, but like, she is sober. Let's let her think she's going to start this cosmetics company. I legitimately believe that.
But
if it wasn't for that, it was like, and like, thank God they didn't do anything, right?
It is really interesting because as well as doing the B Corp stuff, I'm kind of like, in some ways, probably more passionate about helping companies and individuals connect to their true purpose and work out who they really should be and what contribution they should be making. Because the vast, and there's so much of it that you sort of talked about in your intro. That whole concept of intergenerational trauma. So there's a an area of study or an area of biology called epigenetics. So we know that trauma that is taken on by an individual, particularly a female, that can affect their DNA and how their hormones run, which will affect the child in utero. So it's like a throwback mechanism when we were all running around from saber-tooth tigers. If the mother thought that the child was about to be born into a time of hardship, i.e., there was not much food, or there was a lot of external pressures, this epigenetic pressure was put on the child to make them more resistant as an individual, which then means typically those children have, in the modern world, they have developmental issues because they're sort of resistant to authority. They're because they had to be built as like these super resilient little humans who kind of just had to survive. So there's been a lot of studies done, obviously through survivors from the Holocaust in Europe, and there's a lot that demonstrates, like, literally, so when we think about who am I. Well, you have been influenced by what happened to the life, from the lives of your grandparents. And so without understanding your history and knowing actually who you are and why you are who you are today, you have no hope of working out who you should be or who you could be. And I think you're like a really clear case of like, you had that kind of moment, and it's like, you've changed who you were, and you've
totally.
I'm guessing you possibly feel more connected and happy, and a lot. I mean, yes, I'm sure there's been trials
All
and tribulations with a startup business, but when you look back to working in the fisheries, compared to kind of where I'm guessing you're probably quite happy that this has all happened.
1000%. I really love that you're highlighting this, because when people ask me, like, how do you do this? How is this? This is one of the greatest passions of my life, but it's also one of the most challenging passions. Like, and it's an enormous amount of work, and I can't believe I love it and still do as much as I do. But I really do believe I found what I'm supposed to be doing. And it's so interesting when you understand the genetics and who we are and why we become, like, it just all makes so much sense. And my life in the last 10 years has been really quite unbelievable. Really, it's quite dramatic. And I believe we as human beings, like, our brains are so powerful, but we also have the ability to have so much play and say in and how we're guiding our paths. And I discovered that in coming out of addiction, how I really had to find and create new pathways, and it's been marvelous for sure.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. And the whole parents thing, there's typically two layers. And again, this is why I want to do this. I'm doing this podcast. Maybe there is another Jenn out there who's not quite where you've got to yet. And they hear that, okay, Jenn had the same things. Like, she was in a job that she wasn't enjoying. She had some other issues, and everyone was saying, no, don't be stupid, don't go and do your thing. Hopefully someone hopefully someone might hear your story and it kind of resonate. But I think it's really interesting that it's like the old crabs in the bucket. Quite often parents say, claim to be supportive, and I just want what's best for you, but they're dealing with their own trauma, and they're dealing with their own well, when I was your age, my parents didn't let me do what I wanted to do, and so subconsciously I'm protecting you, but I'm just as much protecting me, because I actually I kind of don't want you to be more successful than me, because that that puts me might put me down in my own ego and emotions. So there's so much complexity when it comes into that family, friends, and the world at large not wanting you to give it a go, because the risk is that you actually succeed, and it sometimes that people don't want that for you, which is, I think that's a big part of the journey. The other part is people's lack of self-awareness, and I think people just don't know. Like I said, they don't know who they are. It was interesting to me when I sort of went through my purpose journey. I really wanted to work out, like, where did I come from? Like, I knew my immediate roots, as in like grandparents, but beyond that, I didn't really know anything. And for 10 years, I sold medical devices, which is quite a weird industry. Like, you only normally get into it either by being a nurse who sees these people coming into the hospital and standing in the operating theatre, or the OR, as you guys would say in North America. And so they go, oh, that looks like a fun job, I want to do that. Or you know someone who does it, and they get you into the industry. It's this really weird industry. Turns out I had like a great uncle who sold medical devices in Bermuda. It's like, and I had another relative, I think it was like a great grandfather who was an ambulance driver. So it's like,
Wow.
well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it? I've got these two people in my not that too distant future who were tangentially involved in the medical industry, and it's kind of like really interesting when you start understanding like why have I gone to do certain things, and then you look back and you go, actually, there is a bit of a heritage of that somewhere in my past. So I think that's a really key part of the journey to understand why you are who you are today, and then work out from there what you want to do. That's so cool. And mentioning Patagonia, I think they're probably single-handedly responsible for the most number of B Corps in the world. I think if B Lab could work out how many people they have influenced, it would be probably almost all the current B Corps. So it's like, yeah,
Which is
Patagonia was one of the first brands I heard.
a pretty powerful legacy to have, right? Like if you're changing um, people's ideals of how business can be done, that's pretty powerful.
Massively, massively. So so you had this dream, you had the moment. What happened then? You just created some lip gloss products, and like, how do you start
Yeah.
a cosmetics company on after a dream?
So you go to Google, right? Where everyone goes to find out everything. Can I make a lip gloss? Turns out you could in your kitchen. I'm married to somebody, speaking of the medical industry, in regulatory and compliance. And so there's no
Nice.
way on this earth that he would ever allow me to make a product that I was going to then sell to somebody else from our kitchen. So that wasn't going to happen. However, I also, in that same Google search, you find that there's people out there, it's called private label, that
Yes.
very simply can make a product. And it's really a lot of how a lot of industries operate and run now. And it's why, in particular in beauty, the barrier to entry in our industry is very low. Like anyone can start a brand. You get one of these private labelers, you take their products, but it's really their product, their formulation, their packaging. They're just going to put your logo and your brand on it, and they're going to do the same thing for a million. So
Yeah.
the competitiveness is just unreal. And so I initially had to start that way. We found a partner that was actually right here in Toronto, and it was immediately it was within a few months where people started asking me questions about the ingredients, and that's the naive side going, "Oh my goodness, like I don't even know how to answer this. I have no idea what they're talking about." And
Yep.
I'm the type of person, if I don't fully understand something, then I feel like I can't move forward unless I do.
Yep.
And so, no making, formulating, chemistry background, I decided that I would need to fully understand how products were made and started working with contract chemists. And so went from immediately going, okay, people, the brand in a really short period of time was getting attention. Um, I think it's history. It's always about time and place. And in Canada in particular, there was a huge focus on, because of this residential school system and Indigenous people. And there was something what we called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was created in our country. And it was now, how is this whole concept of reconciliation going to look with the Indigenous community? So people were like looking to support Indigenous businesses, and we had literally started at that perfect time. So this is why we're gaining a ton of attention from Indigenous community. And people and all people, but I believe that's why there was some early success. But then I personally went down this path of, oh my goodness, this whole way we've started, this is the wrong way. And I knew that immediately. I'm like, this is not going to work. I'm going to need money. I had none. And I'm going to need support in somebody with a skill set that I didn't have. And so I knew immediately. I started seeking investment with this new concept of the brand. And the whole idea was to focus on the idea of sustainability, but through this Indigenous lens. I have publicly said that Indigenous people are the OGs of sustainability. I feel
Yep.
like our communities have really just had this through our entire like systems and throughout history. Like our ancestors have always done things where they're actually paying really close attention to what's happening in nature and how we as humans are impacting that. And just started diving into all of that research, and how it's unfortunate, but many of this is not in history books or textbooks, because within our communities, our stories are all passed down orally as well. So
Mm.
this is a matter of like going to community, speaking to elders in our community, learning about our teachings through community. And so that was a few years of work. And at the same time, so you're not like, I'm still working my full-time day job, but I'm doing all of this stuff over the next few years, and really found that there was an audience, this brand needed to exist. I was really feeling that. And then thankfully, there is an investment group that came into existence, three gentlemen out of Vancouver, Canada, and they were really focused on investing in businesses that were focused on social impact, which was a
Nice.
whole new conversation. And one of the founding partners had done this in Africa. And I really just feel like that was just such a serendipitous moment, because when I look back, and I really understand that nobody in their right mind was ever going to give me money. Like, I knew nothing. And thank goodness they didn't know enough not to give me money. And they just believed and saw my passion about what I was trying to do and build. And so we literally went and created a whole new business model. And it was about, okay, can we really and honestly, authentically make products that are better than what exists? Turns out, with the support of chemists and some sustainability scientists, that yeah, there's a lot of ingredients that we're putting in stuff that doesn't need to be there.
Mm.
Packaging could look different. There was like so many layers. We're talking about going down, and I know you understand this, and this community understands this, like the entire supply chain, right? Like,
Yeah.
from, it's a concept coined out of the University of Portugal, life cycle thinking analysis. So when you're like from the harvesting of everything to the end of
Yeah.
the life, and then we looked at the end of life and we're like, how do we make sure this isn't going to go to a landfill like a lot of beauty waste
Mm.
does? And we worked backwards and we said, okay, so we can, one, focus on more naturally derived formulations where ingredients are biodegradable. So they're not changed in a lab so that it would be actually impacting an ecosystem in a negative way. And a lot of them, that boiled down to like removing a lot of synthetic based ingredients. There's stuff in cosmetics that are known to disrupt aquatic life
Yep.
ecosystems. And that could be, you're wearing makeup, you go in a lake, ocean, all of those things. And so
Yep.
it was this huge dive for years into this space. And so then finally I think it was by 2021 when I feel like we changed product, got the product right, got the formulations right, and then really focused on packaging to think about refillability, reusability, um, uh, how do we remove single life
Mm.
usage from this, in this space? Like, that was the whole idea. And it's really tough because when you look at formulation, that's where it gets, you don't want to, like, unfortunately, air is a no-no in cosmetics. Like, air gets that stuff, starts to oxidize. So
Yep.
you're looking at tightly like, it was just so, a lot of work for years, and just deciding what is the right thing, and then really being open and honest and transparent with our community. I feel like that's where we've gained the most trust, is just being like, look, we're not going to vilify plastic, because in some cases there's a use for this plastic that's already been put into the existence in our planet, and like, what are we
Yep.
going to do with that? And is you are using less energy when you're making and repurposing plastic versus making a whole new aluminum thing, glass thing, wood thing. And so, and then are we going to disrupt all of the ancient forests and just make sure that's okay if we're like using all paper and wood, if we all chose to do that? Like, so there was so many unanswered questions that we've slowly answered, helped educate our community, educate ourselves. And then, like you said, this is a journey. There's no perfection here. Humans are just notorious for this. We want things, we want to know if something's right or wrong, black or white. In our world of sustainability paths, that doesn't exist. Because, and
100%.
we work with a lot of scientists, and there's no scientist that I've met so far in my space that will ever tell me 100% of anything is 100%. They're like, well,
Yeah.
you could do this, but if this happened, right? And we've seen that
Yeah.
in innovation. We're living in a space right now where we all thought like the electric car was the answer and it's going to save our planet. But meanwhile, like, where and how we're mining lithium, and like
Exactly.
wars are being like, Like there's a lot of problems that humans create in the name of innovation and doing something better for good. However, we all know greed is behind a lot of these big things. And so it's really important to, find the people, because they're out there, that are really trying and being honest and transparent about the work that they do.
100%. Cannot agree more with anything you just said. It's so true. That again, that's one of the big things I've learned. I'm giving away all my 100 episode tips. It's like it's not black and white. It is. There's like, I keep using the examples of the t-shirt I'm wearing from Nick at Etico. I give him a shout out pretty much every episode. So it's fair trade cotton, B Corp certified company. This is a better t-shirt than buying one off Temu or Shein.
Yes.
Like that is better, clear cut. Like you say, electric car. Well, yes, but no. And yes, but no, and maybe, and I don't know, and and I always, I remember, this is going back years when I was at school. We had a physics teacher, Mr. Smith, and he was talking. We were going through the discovery. So Ernest Rutherford, who actually discovered the current model of the atom, based here in Christchurch, New Zealand. And so he was talking about how Rutherford's discovery, and I put my hand up and said, "But Mr. Smith, this was in like the early 1900s, and since then we've had quite a lot of scientific advancements. So theoretically, his model could also be wrong because." It was different or wrong before he came along. And he just said, Timothy, you don't need to worry about that. You just need to learn Rutherford's model for the exam. And I was just like, and that just has always sat with me. And having spent 10 years in the medical device world where, I know from firsthand experience that companies pay for scientific papers. And if they don't give the right result, they then demand that those papers are not released. So we know that there's squiffy science and data out there. And so, it's like you say, it's so complex. And then with the packaging, it's like, again, Untouched World, another great example. They moved to biodegradable, compostable packaging to ship all their products out. But then they sort of really dug into it and realized actually it wasn't biodegradable and compostable. So they moved back to recycled plastic, and they had uproar from their customers. And they, Perry admits they should have front-footed it and started with why they were doing it rather than just swapping it. But they then educated their clients, and the customers like, oh, okay, we get it. It's not so obvious. And I think it makes it hard for people wanting to try and do good because there's no clear North Star around. That's what it is. But I also think that's part of the excitement of what we're all doing as a nascent community of businesses trying to make the world a better place. Is like there is no answer, and we've actually got to try and figure this out. And I think that's part of the excitement of the journey, and some of that tension.
Well, and those of us that have consumer goods, like let's face it, we know the sustainable answer is buy less, use less, right?
Yeah.
Totally. However, there is, being in the space now of beauty and recognizing, oh, wow, like these giant conglomerates, they've had years to make these changes and do things differently. And if we as a tiny brand can figure that out and recognize that isodiocane is an ingredient that should not be going in makeup because it is impacting aquatic, like why is anyone even using it? Like it just doesn't even make sense to me. However, no one's ever questioned, right? And that's the thing. And this is what consumers get to do is if we're questioning them, this is where the changes will then 100%. Happen. Yeah.
100%. I guess it's like that story about Ford motor cars when their seatbelts weren't working, or there was a fault with one of their cars, and they worked out that it was cheaper to just pay out the claims on deaths that happened with the car than it was to change the issue. And so they were kind of like, we'll go with that. It's like one of those famous ethics cases in the business world. It's like, well, yes, but what if it was your auntie, uncle, mum, dad, sister, brother, son, daughter that was in that car? Like, does that? Yeah. And I think that's what happened for me in the medical device world. Like, I've talked about it fairly frequently, but the medical device world at large cares more about making money than it does about patient outcomes, and that's the companies, and in many cases, the surgeons and doctors performing the procedures. Obviously, you guys in North America have had the OxyContin stuff. It's similar stuff happening in other parts of the medical world, and so it's like if the one industry that should just be about fixing people and making them come into a system and come out better actually doesn't care about people, it just cares about making money. Why should the cosmetics industry, why should the car industry have to care? And I think, again, this is something I keep coming back to. It's like the origins of commerce and business, was you providing something to your community in a mutual beneficial way, in a manner that wasn't destroying the community. And I think it's only really in the last sort of 50 to 75 years that business has been completely captured by the and I tend to say it's not capitalism isn't bad. It's not making a profit that's bad. It's profiteering. It's
Mm.
knowingly making money whilst causing harm, or taking excessive money due to someone else's naivety. That's like, you guys make money, but you do really good stuff with the money, and you're creating really great products that aren't destroying the planet. If you make more money, that's good, because it means you're making more impact, because your impact is indexed to your revenue.
Well, like
Whereas,
if we look at Patagonia and the success
yeah,
that they've had and the businesses that they've transformed in the way that they think about how business should be done, that in itself, and never mind the the work that they've done with the money that they've made, you're definitely onto, like, that's the right messaging that we need to be
yeah,
sending to our next generations for sure.
yeah. And I think it seems to be happening. I've done a fair bit of work over the last decade at the University of Canterbury here, going in as like a mentor for speed
Hmm.
business events, or panelists, or talking at various events. And 10 years ago, if there were 20 startup businesses in a room that you were talking to or advising, there might have been two that had a social or environmental lens on it. Now there's probably, in the last cohort that I helped out, there was probably like 18 out of 20 had some kind of social or
Yeah.
environmental lens on it. And it almost seems to be that if you're at university now, particularly in New Zealand, and you haven't got a side hustle, like the Jenn, the Jenn that's out there now, aged 18 to 20 at university, has probably got the cosmetic side hustle already, and
Yeah.
they're already thinking about how do we make it, be socially environmental. So I do think, I keep saying, in 20, 30 years' time, when we're all in the intergalactic rest home on Mars, or wherever we're living, we'll be sitting there going, oh, Jenn, do you remember in 2025 when we were sort of, berating companies for not being enough B Corps? I think we'll look back in 20 or 30 years, and hopefully it will be like a completely different landscape, and it will be well in part due to amazing humans like you that have come in and disrupted industries and gone, no, actually there's a different and better way that you can do it. So yeah, nice one.
Thank you.
So yeah, I guess, so B Corp popped up on the radar. You'd heard of B Corp before you founded the business, or was it on the
Yes.
journey of?
So I knew about it, a little bit before because of in my food world, I was the sales rep selling sustainable seafood. I wanted my customers to have a great story of, like, they could say where their wild salmon was caught and what
Yep.
fishermen caught sharing land-based shrimp farming was becoming popular, land-based fish instead of
Mm,
ocean-based fish farms. There was land-based fish farms, and so I've always been in that space where these things mattered. I definitely had reusable bags and a water bottle along for with me for a long time. I think culturally it's very interesting. Even though I was not always fully connected to my culture my whole life, I
mm,
feel like I've always just been innately connected to things in nature, and that's just who I am. And so those
mm,
things really always did matter. Um, then I started to learn more about the B Corp community through bigger brands and watching what they were doing, and then wondered if it was a possibility, and the opportunity came about for us to start the process, and we set out on that journey in 2020. And it wasn't until it was like the end of 2019 or 2020, but it was 2021 April where we were
nice,
when we became certified B Corp. Yes. But it
nice.
really aligns, like, to be truthful, um, like, if I look at our Indigenous values and principles, the B Corp community's values and principles align with our culture. And the culture is not only
Mm,
my culture, but the company culture that we were creating. And so it just made sense. And I remember thinking about having certifications, and the more I learned about certifications, and unfortunately, many of them were really just asking us for a check. Nobody was
Yeah, yeah,
checking anything.
yeah.
And I'm talking about well-known ones that are on a lot of
Mm,
packaging today, like neutral spaces, whether it's plastic, carbon, what have you,
mm,
like all of these things. And nobody was asking you for actual information.
yeah,
They were just like, you can put this on your packaging and here,
yeah.
send us the money. And I was like, this just feels so wrong. And I knew in the seafood world, the same thing was happening from
Mm,
that career. And so I was like, interesting. And then we started speaking to the B Corp people, and this was going to be a process that took a long time. And that actually shocked me. And then I was like, oh, okay, you actually want to know how
this
we're
thing might be
doing.
legit.
Yeah. And so it's not perfect either. We all
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that.
yep,
It's like we're human. And organizations are run by imperfect humans. And so, but it is the best option that exists. And I still believe it is the best and only option that exists in the world at the moment, right? In terms of
yeah,
what's actually happening in the space and how things are vetted and how things are checked. None of those other organizations asked me to send and sign off this paperwork with our lawyers,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like nobody, not one of them. They were just like ready and waiting for the checks. And so I really believe that this is a way that we can actually tell people, like, these are the brands and the businesses that are doing good and trying to do good, right? And trying to, like, we're all in this
Yeah, yeah.
space. Like, none of us are perfect, but we're here all trying together.
100%. Yeah, totally agree. It's not perfect, but it's the only framework that's globally recognized, looks at social and environmental performance, and is independently audited.
Yeah,
Like you say, there are so many others where it's just like you pay your money, you're a member, you're basically paying to be a member of like an advocacy group, but there's no conditions on you actually having to improve your performance. So it's like,
correct.
yeah, I think it makes it tough, possibly for consumers, to really understand the difference. Did you? Yeah, in terms of like you certifying a couple of, well, I've got loads of questions. So I'll start with the first question. So what was the journey like for you internally? Because I think you're like most of the companies that I've worked with, like you were basically a B Corp already, and
Yeah.
going through the process was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe there's a couple of things here and there that we hadn't considered, but fundamentally you were pretty sorted, I'm guessing. So there weren't really any mindset shifts that you had to go through, or
No, it was
um,
definitely how we were trying to operate. Once we, not definitely not the first few years, but we hadn't even started then anyway.
sure,
It was when we were started making our own products and our formulas and understanding our ingredient supply chain and all those things. And we had really someone on our team, thankfully, who came from the waste management industry, and had worked in environmental spaces before, which was so helpful because I had not. So they really charged the way and led the path for this to make this happen for us. And what I loved, and I said, as we started, I was like, even if we come out bad, because I
mm,
honestly didn't know. I was like, I knew we were making all these good decisions, but you don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the day.
yeah.
And then I just said we need a place to start from, and then that's literally information I share to this day with anyone who
Mm.
thinks and wants to start to figure out where they are. I'm like, if anything, they're going to give you a place to start from, and then you can work chip by chip, brick by brick, like literally figure out what changes you can make and what you can do differently.
100%. I'll just put a little ticker up there. There you go on the bottom. That's the thing. Like so many companies, like, oh, sustainability, business for good, impact. Oh, we don't know where to start. It's like, just go and have a look at the impact assessment. It's completely free, and
Yeah.
it's a global gold standard. Not perfect, but it's a decent standard to go have a look at and go, what are we doing? Are
Mhm.
we are we up to scratch? And I think I always find, like, most companies that have got to the point where they're curious enough about B Corp that they're maybe reaching out to another B Corp, or they're having a conversation with someone like me, it's like you're probably frighteningly close to meeting the standards. And if you're
Yeah.
not, you're clearly of the mindset and intent that you want to be, so you will make the necessary changes to get certification. I think there's because obviously there's Nespresso and a couple of bigger companies that have got in. They say got in. They are certified. They've met the standards. There's something like, how can they be a B Corp and blah blah blah. It's like, well, I know from talking to the team at Nespresso, it took them 3 years
Yeah.
to just pass. So I see it's less often that it's companies who are completely not B Corp aligned who use B Corp to necessarily become a B Corp. It's normally companies like yours who are we're trying our best to make sure we're meeting a high standard. and when we look at B Corp, we actually getting the standard is pretty achievable because you're already thinking that way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Were there any sort of shocks or surprises? Were there anything that you kind of thought you were nailing, and then you looked at the assessment, you're like, oh, hang on, actually, we're really not that good here, or anything the other way around?
No, nothing like stood out that like, oh, we're accept like it was like you said. I think we just knew we were on the path of really trying hard to focus on those things from the beginning, and just learning. I think what for me as a business founder and trying to build a company and culture was like, oh, what are all the things that I plan on doing for employees in the future? And like, how
Yep.
do I want so employee engagement for me was eye-opening because I don't come from an HR background. It's not something that I ever truly focused on. So it actually helped me look at that differently and think about how we want the company set up for success in the future, right? Of like, what do we want this to happen? Like, just more wellness opportunities, volunteering opportunities for team, just stuff like that that I had never sat down and thought about. And that's what the whole process does. It like helps you think about where you can make improvements, and that certainly is it. And when you
Yep.
are a startup, like why not start there? A lot of bigger organizations, like we mentioned espresso, it's like you're turning a giant ship around, right? So
Exactly.
like if you're a startup, like I would say start with this model from the beginning.
100%. Yeah, use it as your framework. I've got a few clients at the minute who are pretty small, young businesses, and they're
Yeah.
exactly that, using it as like they don't have any employees, but it's like that's great. Let's look at the employee section, and you can build your policies and procedures around it. So when you do start hiring your first few team members, you're good to go. You're not going like I said, I have no idea. I've never hired someone before. What do I do? Yeah, it's super useful framework. And so, how did the team take the B Corp journey? Was there like good awareness around it? Did they all come on board the journey?
We were, yeah,
before you answer that, I'll just mention actually. So Janora, who were a skincare company based here in Christchurch, it was we had their whole team go through the assessment, and what was really enlightening was Monique, the CEO. In her head, she was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing that," and then the rest of the team will go, "Do we? Like, where's that ever been written?" And one of the classic examples was she said, like, one of the questions, do you offer flexible working hours? And she's like, yeah, totally. And the whole team looked at her and go, since when?
What?
And she's like, well, in my head, I thought I told you all that I don't care if you come in at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock. As long as you're delivering the work, you can come at whatever hours you want. And it's like, cool, right? Should we now write that down as a policy, Monique, so that everyone actually knows that? So I think that's like a really common example of like in your head as the CEO, you just presume that everyone knows it, but you forget that you actually haven't told everyone.
Exactly. No, exactly. And it was just me and my sort of partner Brienne that really were the ones focusing on everything. But I know she was asking people questions, and it was kind of better coming from her asking
Yeah.
them and not me, because again, they're like, oh, Jen's the boss. Like, what do I say? What do I say here with this question? So it was much better for her to do that. So I do recommend, if somebody who can not be sort of the leader, be the one asking the questions, like you were supporting that business, they might not have answered that so openly had it been
Yeah.
just her there, right? Yeah.
But and so when you got the certification, how did the team react to it?
Everybody was really excited because for something, yeah, it was, we worked on it for so long. I know we had like a little celebration just because it is a big process, and it's like something you're super proud of, right? When you work so hard and you're like, okay, we made it, we got all the results. And at the time, Sephora in Canada had no other B Corp businesses in their store. Now they do in Canada. There's I think two other brands that are indoors in Sephora in Canada that are B Corps. So it was
Nice.
really interesting that we were the first one, but that is super cool. Not that Sephora knows what B Corp is, or would be challenging for a retailer maybe to go down that path. I
Yeah.
understand that part, but yeah, it was really exciting to be able to share that news.
Nice. Yeah, we were in the States not this January, the January before, and we went to the Grand Canyon and then went Grand Canyon through Vegas to get back to LA. And we've got a 12-year-old daughter, and she was like, "Oh, I want to go to Sephora. I want to go to Sephora." And this is so funny. So we went to this mall. It was on a Sunday morning, and the mall didn't open until 10 a.m. So it was like 9:50, and we're standing outside the Sephora in downtown Las Vegas, and there was another couple with two teenage daughters milling around, and I went over to the dad and said, "Oh, are you guys?" And he was from Sweden, so his family was from Sweden. We're from New Zealand, and I'm like, "Oh, so you're going on a US tour of Sephora's as well?" And he's like, "Yes, we've been to Sephora." So yeah, in New Zealand we have a place called Mecca, which is very aptly named for the number of times I get dragged to there with my daughter to look at some. I've no idea
the group of that is loving this beauty world is getting younger and younger, which is so
100%.
fascinating. I mean, we can thank social media for that. Thank or disthank, I don't know what, or unthank.
It has its moments. My daughter's like, "Oh, guess how much this lip balm costs?" It's like, I don't know, but it's probably going to be more than I would have spent on one. But that's cool. I don't underestimate. I was talking to Andrew from Pedal Group. So they run UK, Australia, New Zealand. It's a bike brand called 99 Bikes. They sell push bikes and what have you. And he's pushing a lot around his supply chain because there's quite not great supply chain issues happening in some of the cycling industry. And I think this is the same for any B Corp. Like, the fact that you were the first one in Sephora, well, B Corp is now on the radar with Sephora, and they've got other brands. So you don't know what conversation you might have instigated, with hopefully, because typically what I find in organizations of a bigger nature like that, where they're maybe not so aligned, is that there will be a concerned citizen in that organization who absolutely loves your energy and your vibe and everything that you and your organization stand for. And they're sitting there going, A, how do we get more companies like Jenn's in, or how do we get more of Jenn's business into our business? But they will also hopefully now be having conversations internally like, "Oh, I noticed that, Cheekbone Beauty does that. I wonder if we could do that." So, I said to Andrew yesterday, you as the CEO founder will always get the email or the response of like, "Your product was rubbish," or "It didn't turn up on time." You're never going to get that contact from someone inside one of your companies in your supply chain going, "Jenn, you've inspired me. I'm now trying to make that change internally." Like, it's really unlikely that person is going to ring you and give you that feedback. So just presume that it is happening. And if someone has been inspired by Jenn, ring her and let her know, because it's always nice to know that you've helped someone think differently. And so was B Corp. So in terms of like supply, sales and distribution, has B Corp helped? Has it been beneficial with any of those conversations?
Like, I believe so. I mean, we've grown since we started working with B Corp, and I think it just makes your business better. I really do. And when you can include that in the conversation, we talk in sales from my past career a lot about features, advantages, and benefits.
Yep.
And I think the more kinds of conversations you can have with people about your product and what sets it apart, and for us, B Corp is part of that. And so we have certainly grown to a different business since we started.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, the trends seem to show that year on year, more consumers care more about supporting brands that can prove the good that they're doing. And like you say, if it's, we paid a few $1,000s to slap a logo on, and actually, when we scratch it, there's nothing. And again, I think that's, just connecting with you and looking around your business online, there's a depth to the purpose and the impact that you're having, which is not always there, and not always there in some B Corps. Like, I think it's fair to say there are some, even, some B Corps who have possibly done it for marketing purposes, or for we need to stand out for talent attraction. But you can sense and really feel the ones that, as I was saying, I think it was to Andrew yesterday, like yours feels like solid marble. Like if we cut it, it's like it's marble all the way through. Whereas a lot of others, it's like a marble veneer, but if you scratch it, it's pretty clearly MDF underneath. And if you hit it with a big enough hammer or whatever, it's just going to fall apart. Whereas it's clearly you've got that connection to your indigenous roots. You're making a lot of impact in that sector, which I'll ask you about now. Like I say, you for me, it's the businesses that are clearly purpose and impact driven. Is if you scale your business, your impact goes with it. The ones that are a bit flimsy, it's like it's not indexed to what you do. Talk to us a bit about some of the impact that you're making. But obviously, you've got the core of an impact. Like, your product is impactful because you're making a better product that's less damaging to humans and the planet. So you've got the win there, but you're also making some impacts around the business. So what are you doing there?
Yeah. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to do in terms of the social impact we're making. Within Canada, it's really interesting, like, growing up, th I didn't feel like we were seeing a lot of this representation, and it's so interesting to me now to see just the Indigenous business space and how it's grown. There's and I really want Cheekbone to understand, not only just me as the founder, but our business. Like, we've made an impact here, and we've been part of helping that happen in this country, which is pretty phenomenal to see so many new Indigenous entrepreneurs join the community of starting a company. And I think what we needed to see people doing it and to see it being
Mm.
successful. And so we're really proud of that. And then from that initial dream was this idea of a scholarship fund in honor of my grandmother who did survive residential school. And so when we became B Corp certified in April of 2021, in that September is when we launched our scholarship fund. And in 2021, we were able to deploy one scholarship to an Indigenous youth. The next year was five. The year after that was 10. And this year we're deploying 14. So in
Wow.
total, we've deployed 30 scholarships to Indigenous youth. And again, that is, our mission to give 2% of our annual revenues back to causes that matter to us. And for us, it is the Cheekbone Beauty Scholarship Fund where we support that. And it's definitely something that we've seen such a push towards and within our own community, but we're having, there's a few major banks in this country that
Mm.
support this with us. There's an organization that is a not-for-profit based on education that actually now runs the fund for us because, as you know, running a business in itself is difficult. Having a not-for-profit side of things, I was like, we need
Yeah.
a solution and some help here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we're really happy that Inspire had stepped in and is doing that for us. And they normally don't do it with like maybe numbers as small as ours, but grateful now to have their support. And then not only have they jumped in to support it, now every year they'll double whatever we
Wow.
bring into the scholarship fund, they then double it. And so it's just work to be proud of, right? Like,
Yeah, 100%.
I knew from that dream that the world didn't need another lipstick brand or company.
Mm.
Like, it didn't. There's a million already out there, but it did need one that was here to represent Indigenous people, to
Yeah.
represent Indigenous culture, and really highlight, our ancestral wisdom and marry it with Western science and figure out how to make and create incredible products that people have fallen in love with. I'm really proud we have a customer return rate of 65%. And
Mm.
in CPG business, I've heard that it's under 30 is the
Wow.
norm, right? And so to have people coming back to us
Mm.
at that level is enormous. It just speaks volumes. We have such a
Yeah,
loyal
massively.
audience about
Mm.
how good our products are. And I can tell you from the beginning, a lot of times people will be like, well, I supported the brand because I heard you and I was at an event and then I just thought it was cool. I saw it on the shelf. And then they're like, oh my goodness, but the products are phenomenal. And so that is, yeah, well, I'm proud
Nice.
of the social work, but I'm
Mm.
also proud that from somebody who didn't know anything about this space has made naturally derived products really good, which has been a really hard thing to do, especially in the
Mm.
color category.
Yeah. And I think that's so it's well, I mean, just kudos to what you've done. But I think I think some people also kind of think they can put lipstick on the pig, pun intended, in that, hey, we've got an average product. If we go in on social and environmental performance, maybe,
Yeah.
we can kind of hide that fact. But I think people quickly see through that. And yeah, the really good B Corps like yours are the ones that it's like the whole thing is baked in. It's like all the ingredients are in there. It's solid. It's not, it's incorruptible. It's like it's a nice golden lump of gold that is, yeah, it's just shining and beautiful and incorruptible. And just all the way through is gold. It's not a veneer. And I think that's part. I think that's why you're successful. It's because people connect to that, they feel that. And again, talking to Andrew yesterday on the summit, he comes from an accounting background, and when he connected to the purpose in his organization and how people connect to that as an organization, it's really hard as a CEO or a CFO or an operations manager or a COO to measure and report the vibe and the energy factor that our brand emits that connects to people, that makes them come back. but I have no doubt that that's a big part of your success. But if you didn't have a great product as well, you
Right.
wouldn't have it. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's such a cool story. So is your grandmother still alive?
No, no, sadly, she passed away many years ago. And I'm just, yeah, when I think about what she survived and went through, it's
Mm,
quite phenomenal. I was not super close to her. I didn't grow up in my reservation community
mm,
with a lot of my siblings and cousins. I lived off reservation with my mom. And she's just like, she was 4'11", and when they were put into those schools, if we spoke our traditional language,
mm.
like, she would be beaten, physically
Yeah.
beaten and punished for that. And so when she left, and this is what empowers me honestly every single day, is the thinking how the strength of this woman living there for 10 years, surviving this abuse, and coming out and making sure every single one of my family speaks our traditional language,
Wow.
to the point where my one uncle teaches Anishinaabemowin at the University of Minnesota in the United States. And I'm just really proud of that because many people I know lost their language, and she
Mm,
refused to let that happen.
wow. So you're clearly for a line of strong female leaders. Anyway, so there was a destiny. I mean, yeah, it's the same. So I've got my little Welsh flag flying here. So my father's side of the family are Welsh, and in sort of late 1800s in Wales, it was called the Welsh knot. So they put like a block of wood around you, and basically, this child spoke Welsh today, and they'd be beaten, with a stick or a paddle or whatever. So
Mhm.
yeah, a common refrain from cultures around the world. But it's simply, I mean, I'm currently trying to learn Welsh on Duolingo. It's tricky. It's not an
So
not an
is my
intuitive. It's
language, yeah.
not an intuitive language for someone who's not. I mean, I grew up. My dad spoke it a little bit, and we'd go on holiday to Wales every now and then. I
Yeah.
mean, I went to university in Wales, but I mean, I was at the age of 18. You're not really thinking about connecting to your roots too
No,
much. I think that was
no.
probably as close as I got to connecting to my roots. Drinking some Welsh beer, SA Brains in Cardiff. That was as close as I got. But I think again, it's a really interesting. I'm going to connect you with a couple of people in New Zealand because there's a couple of female founders. One's
Oh,
in the
very
food and
cool.
beverage industry, and one has got a startup cosmetics company. And I think she's from a Maori background, so
Oh,
the
very cool.
indigenous. And I think she'd really love to have a conversation if you're open to that. I won't
Yeah,
name names on the
100%.
podcast, but I think
Yeah, yeah.
there's the other lady I'm thinking of. She has a very similar backstory to you, in
Oh,
terms of like
very
how she
cool.
got out of a place of addiction and connected more to her indigenous roots. And I think
Oh, I
there'd just
love
be some
that.
cool conversations there. So are you like more? So just want to reflect like on the grandmother thing. I think there's again when we go back to the purpose thing and one of the ladies I'm going to connect you with, she had a similar like reconnection and this sense of purpose. And again, it motivation is finite. Like if someone had said to you, "Hey Jen, there's a really good opportunity in the cosmetics market. I think you should just start a business in cosmetics," like you possibly would have lasted a few months before you went, "This is really hard. I don't understand it, and
Yeah.
I'm not that interested." But you layer on the dream, you layer on this connection to your grandmother, and that sense of purpose and meaning and contribution, and then your environmental it's like you can just see, and this is what I'm really trying to hope people can sense is like people like you, Jen, you carry just a different sense of, like I say, energy and vibe that it's really hard to pin down and go, this is what makes it up, but these are some of the contributing factors. And I
Yeah.
just this is what I think is going to lead to the transition to business just being better, is there's not that many leaders who've gone through what you've gone through and have then gone and started the business. And so this is what I say, if you can inspire one person today who's like, man, maybe actually I need to connect to my roots a bit more, and I have got this idea. I know not everyone can due to
And that's what
financial and whatever, but
I used to have a harder time sharing maybe more of the personal side of things. But I've really recognized that that's, one, taking shame away from addiction and just realizing like we all have a struggle.
yeah,
And the more vulnerable I became as I was building the company, the more deeper the relationships I would have. And it's just helped me heal, to be quite honest. And I
yeah,
always knew that, what if, like you just said, one person was listening that needed to hear something that I shared that day that was from that vulnerable moment,
mm,
help them on their journey, then it's completely worth it.
yeah. Man, that's so cool. So what's the plan for the future? Future impact, new products, global domination, interstellar domination. Yeah,
Yeah.
what's coming down the line?
Well, I've always had the ideals and the vision of being a global brand, and that's certainly something we want. But it's like I've learned now to be a lot more patient. In the early days, I wanted this to be super successful so fast, but I am here for the long run. It's a journey. It's slow, but it's growing, and we just want more customers to fall in love with the products, and then that in turn allows us to be innovative and make more products. We've done
Yeah.
some really cool projects. We've taken, we have a big wine region in the Ontario part of here, Canada, and we worked with a winery and took their waste and we're extracting actives from it for the potential of putting those actives in our own formulations so that we could have
Wow.
some IP or intellectual property at some point. So just lots of really exciting stuff. And that whole concept of a circular economy is really important to a lot of us in the B Corp space. And so just thinking differently and then having fun with like making products in this space at the same time.
Nice. And I think for me that the fun part is the key part of it. I keep saying it. I just keep banging on like a drum. But you are just the epitome of a business that's having the best party on the street. It's like we're doing cool stuff. We're making a bunch of impact. We're having a great time. We're having fun while we're doing it. Why would you want to go and work for what I call big evil bastards who are just all about, we're going to pay you minimum wage. We're going to, screw down our supply chain. We're going to have, you kind of know our products are probably destroying the planet and communities, but it's like, why would you why would anyone want to go work there when you could go and hang out with Jenn Cheekbone Beauty? Do you know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Again, it's like all these little beacons that are popping up, these B Corps around the world, where it's like everyone I speak to in a B Corp, it's just they've got energy, they've got passion, they've got purpose, and people want to hang out with her. So I have no doubt you will create the global positive impact empire of Cheekbone Beauty.
Thank you so much.
Hey, it's been really, really awesome to speak to you. If people want to connect with you, obviously cheekbonebeauty.com. I think I'd put that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on
previously.
LinkedIn under Jenn Harper, and then I'm on my own Instagram I am called Cheekbone Jenn on Instagram and TikTok. And we're in all those social places, but for sure, I'm here. If anyone has any questions about B Corp or anything else, happy to talk.
Nice. And where did the name come from? Cheekbone Beauty.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure you're familiar with Spanx in New Zealand, right?
Yeah,
Sarah Blakely, very well known. Well, I was listening to a podcast where she was speaking about the K sound, and she used to be in comedy, and the K sound is very memorable. And then she rhymed off a bunch of big brands: Nike, Coca-Cola, Kodak, like that had longevity. And I became obsessed with the K sound, and I was doing my sales rep job driving around, and I thought of the word cheekbone one day, and I was like, oh, it has a K, and it's a feature that I like legitimately love on all humans, and Indigenous people are known for more prominent cheekbones.
So you do have good cheekbones yourself, so I wondered if it was That's interesting. I have to change my company. Now you've got me worried that Grow Good is not going to stop the test of time.
Add a K.
Add a K somewhere.
Broke good.
Yeah. I love it. Hey, stay in cosmetics, not marketing. That would be. Jenn, that's been absolutely super cool. Love everything about you. Hopefully, I can get to Toronto one time and come and meet you in person. That'd be super, super cool.
Awesome.
So yeah, seriously, if you've been listening today and you've not been inspired by Jenn's story to even like vaguely look at B Corp or to even just vaguely look at your business and think about, is there more that we could be doing socially, environmentally? I literally don't know what more I can do to persuade you that doing good is both good for you, the business, the planet, and your communities, and can just be a really, really awesome ride. So yeah, that's it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. You know what it's about. And if you want to have a conversation about B Corp, I might know a guy. Drop me a line. If you can't find me on the internet, then the internet is broken. Thank you so much, Jenn. Awesome. Thank you so much. You go and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. It was great meeting you.
Hey, it's Tim here, that B Corp bloke from Grow Good. If you want more content on purpose, B Corp, how to do more good in the world as an individual or a business, then you know the drill. Hit the like and subscribe. Check out some of our other videos. They're probably floating around here somewhere. You know how it works. Thank you so much. See you next time.